Rose is also a frequent guest host for the Sean Hannity radio program. She has 2 books, Thanking Our Soldiers, an award-winning children's book called Wilson Won't Be Bullied. She's a national speaker, including the Washington, D.C. National Rallies, the D.C. Prayer Service, guest speaker right here at the PLC, as well as other national and local events. For our next program, please welcome Rose Tennant.
I didn't know I was going to be able to hug and kiss a bunch of guys when I came out. That was kind of fun. So, all right. Are you, let's see. Well, thank you guys so much. It was really very informative and entertaining. I appreciate that. I really do. I would like to introduce now the next panel. Jeffrey wants to stay up here with me. Can't we let Jeffrey stay? Our first panelist is Laureen Cummings. She's the first woman to be elected a Lackawanna County Commissioner, and her priorities as commissioner are lowering taxes, reducing county debt, and attacking prescription drug abuse. A nurse and a small business owner, her accomplishments include 2003 Businesswoman of the Year, NRCC Business Advisory Council, serving 2 years as secretary on the board of Greater Northeast Chamber of Commerce, and a nomination to Who's Who Among Women. Please come on out, Laureen. The next panelist is Lisa Essler. She's a founding member of the Delaware County Patriots. She has worked tirelessly for positive change, taking a leading role in holding her representatives accountable and consistently taking her legislators to task on misguided votes. In 2015, she was a write-in candidate in a special state House election in Delaware County, successfully preventing a union president from being elected to the General Assembly. She's currently serving her second term as school board director, winning both terms without the party backing. Please welcome Lisa Essler. Our next panelist is a good friend of mine and participates on our Friday roundtables. He's a Fortune 500 sales executive from Allegheny County who has worked for more than 26 years in the document management industry. Sam was elected to Allegheny County Council as the at-large Republican member on November 3rd, 2015, where he sits on the Budget and Finance, Economic Development and Housing, Public Safety, and Public Works Committee. Please welcome our Republican State Committee who sits on the Resolutions Committee, Sam, Chairman of the North Fayette Republican Council. Thank you, Sam, for coming out. Next, we have an elected county commissioner, November 2015. Joe's successful campaign is considered to be one of the biggest upsets in Pennsylvania 2015 election cycle. Despite being endorsed by the Republican Party establishment, Montgomery County voters chose Joe Gale as their nominee for commissioner in the primary election. Please welcome Joe Gale. And last but not least is Berks County Commissioner since 2008 and board chair since 2012. 2013, he was president of the County Commissioners Association, and he was elected to the National Association of Counties board in 2012 and 2014. Please welcome Christian Leinbach. Please have a seat. Thank you. So today's discussion is about politics, and in particular, local politics. And I don't think I have to tell you just how important local politics can be. So I've asked each panelist to at least describe to you their work and some of the struggles they've had and some of the things they've had to overcome and what they believe to be so important in local government. We're going to start with Laureen.
Thank you very much.
Come on up. Oh, do they sit? I don't even know. Go ahead, sit and relax. You might as well.
Can you hear?
Sure.
Okay. Well, my name is Lauren Cummings. I am. Go up to the podium.
Might have.
Okay. So this pack doesn't work. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lauren Cummings. I am one of the original Tea Party founders in February of 2009. That's where I started getting involved in politics. Prior to that, I wasn't very concerned about it. I owned my own business, and as I learned more, I learned that the government needs to be of the people. We need our voices heard, and that's what I decided to do. And local politics has shown me that your voice is better served at local areas. And it's easier to see your politician when you live a mile or two away when they're at work rather than having them out in Harrisburg. So I appreciate all the work that all of you do in order to educate others in your family and friends in regards to local politics and state and federal. Challenges I ran into, let's see, it's getting your message out. So you have to have a really big mouth like me. And I know many of our Tea Partiers do. They're not afraid to challenge anyone. They're not afraid to stand up and tell people exactly what their opinion is. And that debate has allowed us all to see more engagement in the political process because of all of you and people that are sitting up here on this dais with me that decided to also get involved and do the same thing. So I think the biggest challenge is getting the message out. And one of the challenges the Republican Party seems to have is they're not very good at messaging. So their message gets lost because we're principled. We don't do sound bites. We actually tell the truth, and principled positions are held. So it's hard to get that message out without just saying war on women, for example. I am a woman. I am a Republican woman. I am the first woman in Lackawanna County. Highly Democrats are 3-1. They run our county. But I won. And it's because people see that we really are tired of losing our homes and getting less money in our paychecks. And all of you are going to help to change that along with everyone up here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next panelist is Lisa Essler. And I think one of the interesting things, too, is that when we hear some of these people speak, you'll notice that they started out somewhat as activists, and they decided to take that next step, because there is a next step. And seeing them get involved in politics and starting with local politics is a great first step. So Lisa, why don't you come up and share your experience as well?
Hi, I'm Lisa Essler, and I'm an optician by trade, and I first started about 2009 with a lot of people in the early stages of the Tea Party. I met with 12 people who were concerned, and we decided to work together to change what was going on. And we joined together. We weren't sure how we were going to do it, but we knew that we had to do something. And one of the things we decided to do was support candidates that were worthy of our efforts, as well as run for office. And I did that in 2010 when I ran for state committee, unendorsed. I won 44% of the vote. And what it did was it taught me a lot about the political system. I knew nothing about it. I then went on in 2011 to run for school board, and I was not endorsed, but I won that school board race. And going into the school board, I was labeled as a Tea Party, so I had to be very careful about the way I approach things, but I learned the issues and won them over and earned their respect as well as the superintendent's respect. They then made me the legislative reporter for the board, which allowed me to express opinions on prevailing wage, pension reform, paycheck protection, and Common Core. When it came time to run again, I was the only Republican on an all-Republican board that was not endorsed. That shows you when you speak the truth and you're clear about it, it makes people nervous. But I won, and I ran my own campaign, speaking on the issues I had done and spoke about in my first term. I won more votes on the Republican and Democratic ticket than any other candidate had, and someone told me more than anyone ever had in a primary. And that was without the help of the establishment. Shortly after that, as they mentioned earlier, I ran for state representative in a write-in campaign. I was not able to get on the ballot because of the process during that special election, but I was able to garner 1,000 votes, and I was able to keep a union boss out of the caucus, the Republican caucus in Harrisburg. So what it did was it exposed the Republican Party for their hypocrisy. If I could say one thing, I would say that elections don't happen in a vacuum. It takes a lot of good people, and takes team building, and it's uncomfortable to knock on doors, and it's still uncomfortable for me, but I continue to do it, and I would encourage everybody here to do it, because the worst fear any candidate has is not having the volunteers they need to get a message out. Thank you.
Our next panelist actually is the prime example of someone who started out as an activist and then moved into elected office, taking that passion and fervor that he felt and doing something with it, going beyond activism. So Sam, would you please explain how you got to where you are, to elected office, and a little bit about your activist background, what you were involved in?
Sure. Folks, my first experience here in activism on this scale was at the 2010 Pennsylvania Leadership Conference. And it was at that time when I got to see 700 to 800 other activists from across the state and talk to these folks and realize the difference that you were making in your communities, that it gave me the inspiration to try to do something in my own. I started out getting involved in activism here back in 2009. As Rose had explained earlier, I'm a salesman for a Fortune 500 company. We want to do business with everybody, okay? So you sort of kept politics in the background, didn't want to get involved other than donating to the different candidates or the committees. But when I saw what was taking place in 2009 with the stimulus bill, with the auto bailouts, with the things that were taking place, I knew that I couldn't sit on the sidelines anymore. I got involved with a group that we started called Veterans and Patriots United, which was a grassroots conservative group outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I became the president of that group in 2010 and realized after a short period of time that we needed to take and do a transition. We started out as activists, many of us, and we walked and we held up signs and we protested, whether it be about Obamacare or any of the other things that were taking place in government that we weren't happy to see. But then I realized, you know what, it's not enough just to protest, we have to get involved. So we started working with groups like American Majority Action, Freedom Works, Americans for Prosperity, and others, brought those folks in to try to educate our membership and the greater community at large on how to take and lobby their legislators, how to hold their politicians accountable, how to demand good government. In getting involved with that, you naturally take it to the next step. We started looking at what were we trying to do. Many of us were frustrated with what we saw taking place in the Republican Party. How are we going to address it? How are we going to fix it? So many of us then took that opportunity and ran for Republican, our local committee. I ran for local committee in North Fayette, which is my township, and then was elected to be the chair of the committee. Getting involved in the county party, you understand, you start to look at state committee, and I heard the horror stories of what had taken place in 2012 in regards to the endorsement process. So the next step was to run for state committee, which I ran and won, and I'm now a member of state committee in the 37th state senatorial district. From there, getting involved in politics and not just standing on the outside and complaining about something, or not just telling somebody this needs to be done, but actually rolling up your sleeves, getting involved, talking to folks and saying, how can I make a difference? Folks recruited me and asked me to run for office here in Allegheny County. Allegheny County is the second largest county in the state of Pennsylvania. It also has the largest number of Republicans in Pennsylvania, in any county in Pennsylvania. One of our challenges, though, is the city of Pittsburgh. Sits right in the middle of Allegheny County. Has a population of 335,000, only 27,000 registered Republicans. Now, there are 5 Republicans on county council. Of the 15 total folks, and I'm the at-large representative, so I sit over the entire county. A couple of the things that I've noticed in getting involved in politics here is the difference in the way you look at things and approach it. As you can tell by listening to me this morning, I'm not a shrinking violet. So a Marine Corps veteran, you know, a salesman, I have no problem speaking up if I think that an injustice is being done or there's something wrong. But it's one thing to stand back when you're not in this seat and say, well, I would say this, or I would do that, or this is how I would handle it. But when you're sworn in and you're sitting in those big black chairs, and it's up to you to make that vote and make that decision, you look upon it in a whole different fashion. It's a very sobering reality, and as the time comes up for you to make these votes on these issues that come before you, you're concerned, do I have all the information? How do I get my questions answered? Because you don't always have the luxury of time. These things are coming before you, you're asked to vote on them, and you're hoping, in many cases, that you're doing the best thing. Our budget, our operating budget in Allegheny County is $854 million. But when you factor in federal, state matching grants from the foundations, our total budget's $1.828 billion. It's a lot of money. And I think having just been sworn in January, the biggest change for me, I guess, or surprise, was how someone asked me, what's your first couple months been like? And I equated it to drinking from a fire hose. Because I don't think there's anything that could prepare you, from the private sector as to what you find in government. I've learned more about public sector HR and collective bargaining and sewage and infrastructure, and if I have to sit through another zoning and planning session and all these sorts of things. But you know what? All of these things are critical to delivering the communities that you want to live in. All of these things are important, and many times we complain and we are concerned about what's taking place in Washington and what's taking place in Harrisburg. Well, we may not be able to fix those, but the first step to fixing those is fixing what's going on in our own communities. So I urge all of you to do what we have done. And please consider, and many of you already are serving in elected office, whether it be on a school board or a local council, but please take a look at this and consider it and take that next step. Thank you so much for your time this morning. I appreciate you tolerating my ramblings there. Thank you.
That was very good. Thank you. Thank you, Sam. Next is Commissioner Joe Gale, and I would like for you to explain, first of all, why your campaign was one of the biggest upsets in Pennsylvania, but also your impressions of local government and encouraging others towards that.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here amongst all these great conservatives. My campaign last year for Montgomery County Commissioner was very exciting. It was a big upset because I was a huge underdog and I overcame the odds. And to give you a little bit about my background, explain how it led up to that point, it started in high school. I grew up in Plymouth Meeting of Montgomery County, and in high school, my American government teacher encouraged me to volunteer at the polls because I was doing very well in her class. My parents weren't involved in politics or anything like that, but I was doing well in the government class. So I volunteered at the polls, and I was out there crossing off the names of the voters and handing out flyers, and it kind of snowballed from there. When I was 18 years old, I became a committee person. I went to Temple University, where I chaired the college Republicans. I was the Montgomery County Young Republican chairman. I ran for Plymouth Township Council, the township I grew up in, when I was 20 years old. And I did so much for the party, whether it's college Republicans, young Republican chairman, ran for council. I just got so disgusted with the establishment. And I think nationwide, you see there's a problem right now. The public's fed up with the establishment. And I shared those same frustrations. And this past year, the county commissioner seat was open in Montgomery County, and the Republican Party endorsed two candidates I thought were extremely flawed. One was a board member of Planned Parenthood, which that doesn't share my values, and the other one had a history of tax delinquency, serious tax delinquency problem. And I thought we're supposed to be the party of moral responsibility and fiscal responsibility, and that wasn't being represented by this ticket that they presented. So I had the courage to run unendorsed in the Republican primary last May and actually give the voters a choice, because I think it should be up to the people. About this local government should be up to the people, not a bunch of party leaders that go behind a closed door and handpick candidates based on who's going to be the best puppet. So to run, just like these other candidates, you have to collect signatures on petitions and file it with the election board to have your name appear on the ballot. Well, I was unendorsed, so I didn't have the committee people, I didn't have the party people helping me. I had a grassroots effort. It was a lot of young individuals. My brother, who turned 25 in February, he was my campaign manager, graduates from Villanova Law School in May. He led the whole charge. Thank you. I'm proud of him, too. So we went out. You have about 2.5 weeks in February to circulate your petitions. Well, if you think back to last year, there was quite a bit of snow. It was about 1/2 feet of snow on the ground. So we were going door to door. Luckily, people were home with the snow, and I got them to sign. And people were so excited to see that a young individual, I turned 27 years old last week. I'm the youngest elected county commissioner in the history of Montgomery County. Had the willingness to run for local government. So from the very beginning, I had a lot of momentum, and I filed my petitions with the election board, And then it was a big shock. I collected more signatures than any other candidate running for countywide office, Democrat or Republican, more than the district attorney candidates, the sheriff candidates, and more than my two primary opponents, the Planned Parenthood guy and the tax delinquent person, combined, more than them combined, and that was without the support of the party. So I think it should be totally up to the people. And then when I won the primary in May, the party establishment was so embarrassed and angry that a young individual beat the party that they wanted to make an example of me. And they actively worked against my campaign from then on. The state Republican Party spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to defeat me in the general election, and then I won again in November. So it was two big upsets with my election. And I hope that sends a statement to the establishment that we're tired of politics as usual, we're tired of the good old boys screwing everything up. As I said earlier, our messaging is horrible. We need young, diverse candidates that can convey the conservative message. So I felt like I was making a positive difference with what we did, and I'm just thrilled to have the opportunity to serve the residents of Montgomery County, and I hope it's a step forward for the conservative movement. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Our next panelist is also a commissioner, Commissioner Christian Leinbach, and we were talking backstage about just some of the things that maybe a lot of us don't know about, some of the things that you face in office that you'd like to share with the others here. And you can stay seated. It's a lot more comfortable. Oh, you like to stand? Oh, that's
just standing
fine.
up.
Do what you do.
I am Christian Leinbach, and for me, the journey begins 37 years ago in 1979. It seems like a long time ago, but I will never forget the 5-week trip that my two aunts took me on to visit relatives in the Iron Curtain countries of Hungary and what was then Czechoslovakia. Those 5 weeks taught me that one of the most important things we have and need to preserve is the fundamental concept of freedom and liberty. That has driven me through the years. 1980, I worked as a volunteer in the first Super Tuesday in South Carolina for Ronald Reagan and have been involved actively. I know many of you over the years, not just through PLC, involved in my community, involved in government, but largely in the private sector. Until in 2007, my wife and I and friends decided there was an opportunity to run for county commissioner in Berks County, Pennsylvania. We were one of the very few counties that flipped from Democrat to Republican in the 2007 election, and that's saying something because in Berks County we have 20,000 more registered Democrats than Republicans. One of the things I did immediately upon my election is the same thing I did in the private sector. I got involved in our associations. I became involved in the County Commissioners Association in Pennsylvania and became involved in the National Association of Counties. Why? Because I learned a long time ago, if you're not involved in helping set the table, you end up being on the menu. I have been able over the years to be involved in pushing back against EPA regulations like waters of the U.S., the new ozone regulations that are being pushed on us right now. I've been able to testify on issues like prevailing wage, on issues like paycheck protection, and issues like union intimidation. There is an opportunity for people at the local level, not just to sit at the local level and vote, but to recognize there's an impact of what happens in Washington, D.C., and what happens in Harrisburg on counties. And so often, I believe that the federal government and the state government do not even understand the fiscal aspects or the reality of what they do and how it impacts counties. Let me give you just one example. We all know the horrific actions of Jerry Sandusky. Over the course of a number of years, the abuse that happened is horrific, and it's unexcusable. But the legislature responded by enacting between 20 and 30 new laws. At the county level, we often refer to those now as the Sandusky laws. These were laws that supposedly are designed to stop what happened. I would suggest it's very doubtful that they would have stopped what actually happened. But more importantly, they were imposed on counties. No money came with that. And last year was the first year of the Sandusky laws. In our county, we believe fiscal responsibility is job number one. And we began looking at the impact and measuring it from the beginning of 2015. In our county, it's increased the Children and Youth Services caseload by 39%. It's cost us over $2 million. By the third and fourth quarter, we've had to hire 7 new people, 5 caseworkers, 2 detectives in our district attorney's office exclusively dedicated to investigating child abuse. And here's the sad part. To date, and the DA and I have discussed this, not one additional person, perpetrator, has been caught as a result of this, but the bigger net has caught innocent family members. That has a direct impact. And guess who foots that bill? There's no funding from Harrisburg. And we have to do it. The local taxpayers foot the bill. There are many other examples, but we need not only local government, we need, and you need to support your local government leaders getting involved with their state associations and setting the agenda for the issues that really matter to taxpayers and for the issues that really matter to the concept of freedom and getting involved at the national level. There is an opportunity to change your country right from the level of local government. Thank you.
Thank you. You are welcome to submit questions. There's paper and pencil on your table, so if you would do that, I would appreciate it. In the meantime, I do have a couple of, first of all, a comment. How clever was Loman Henry when he put together this panel? Because he showed you that it doesn't matter how old you are, what gender you are, what obstacles you face, and whether or not you're an underdog or would be considered one. You can do it, it can happen, and those things can be overcome. And this panel is a clear example of that. I mean, we've got all aspects of life here and experience here, and they were able to accomplish what they set out to accomplish in terms of serving on a local level. So one of the questions that I have, and I'm going to address this to Laureen and Sam. Sam, I'll probably have you go first if you don't mind. But, you know, over the last year or so, there were a lot of headlines in the news about how the Tea Party is dead. It's died. And certainly we don't see the number of people going out to Washington, D.C., or the same number of rallies being held all across the country as we did at one time. But I would suggest, and I'm going to ask you to comment on this, both of you, that perhaps this Tea Party is very much alive and well and is living really right here. Sam, would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I think the folks, when the media talk about the Tea Party being dead, they're just looking in the wrong place. Because we've moved from that protest. We've moved from holding the demonstrations to actually getting involved. And as you can see, you know, there are at least all of us up here, you know, began as activists and have taken this next step. So I think that's one of the big changes that you're going to see out there. And we've talked about the Obama administration. And we've talked in the past about how the impact, while on the national level, we haven't been able to achieve the things that we've been able to, or we wanted to, but on the state level, we hold 31 governor's seats, you know, over 900 state legislators. So I believe our conservative farm team and our bench is very, very strong. And it's only growing. And we're recognizing that these folks, when we see a progressive and they're running for statewide office or they're running for national office, they got their start somewhere. And that start was in your local communities. So by us running for school board or us running for local council and for commissioner and things of that nature is an opportunity for us to govern our communities with our values and principles and to prevent these other folks from getting a start and being able to take and ruin Harrisburg and Washington.
Thanks, Sam. Laureen? Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Am I okay on the mic?
No, hers is not working.
It's not working at all. It doesn't seem to be. Okay, Laureen, you want to try one more time?
Testing.
There you go.
Okay? Should I just
You
point
don't
it to
have
me?
to hold it, it'll be fine.
Okay. Well, you know, that's correct. When I started, the Tea Party's goal was to involve all of the people into their local government, which we thought, okay, well, what's the local government? Lois Kanasheki was someone that I had spoken to in regards to committees and getting on the Republican committee. I watched Wag the Dog. I don't know if anybody remembers that video that was out there. And that's basically how I got started. And I went across our state talking in groups wherever I can find them, Republican, Tea Party, Libertarian, to let them know that they can win an election with one vote, which was their very own. So you could write your name in during the primary and win if that is a blank slate. So people didn't even know what I was talking about, and that was the interesting thing about that, because prior to that, I didn't know that there was this skeleton already there for us to utilize, and it was a blank slate. Because in my county, like I said, it's a Democratic-led county. So there was about 40 people in our Republican committee seats, and we have almost over 300 that needed to be filled. So we filled them. And, you know, we did a really good job in our county. We've been working, we've been electing people. And, you know, I did run for Congress against Matt Cartwright, and I garnered 40% of the vote the first time I ran, ever. You know, then I ran for state committee, got on state committee. Right now in Lackawanna County, we have 3 Tea Party people on state committee, myself, Vince Cruciani, and Bill Jones. So we replaced who was there for years. I mean, those seats used to be handed down from generation to generation before. Now it's we the people that are sitting in those seats, and we're the ones that are picking those people that are running for office. We're the ones that are going out to state committee and endorsing candidates. And that was the goal of the Tea Party, was for the people to decide who was going to be in those seats to choose your candidates. I'm hoping that you're seeing a better slate of candidates out there. I know I think we are. But, you know, what Sam was saying is correct. Now it's all of you that needs to join us and join those committee seats. And every year, look and see with your party if those seats are open, how many seats are open in your ward. There's wards, there's districts. You know, you can get involved in many levels, and you don't have to get elected to that office. If you miss that, there's most likely seats open in your area. Go to your chairman in your local community and ask if there's any committee seats open, and if they will appoint you to them. If they're empty, they will certainly be happy to have somebody extra to help out. We're already doing the work. Go and be a part of the organization where you can actually have a whole team of people that are helping you. And you know, I mean, not that I'm a big rah-rah cheerleader for the Republican Party. I am a conservative. I'm a Christian conservative. But they have, their values and principles are more geared to what I believe than any other party. So, you know, we are now in our county the so-called, unquote, establishment, but we're not. We're Tea Party members. And I think that, you know, when people start to realize that, they'll start to maybe see that, you know, we are running as best we can, and hoping that we can get more support from our conservative friends on the libertarian side as well. Because we really need to work together to make this happen. The rallies were awesome. I've gone to, you know, I brought a bunch of buses out to Washington twice, but, you know, that helps for us to energize us. But it really, and it actually does help with messaging, I think. Because even though the news didn't want to report it, they had to. I mean, there was 1.8 million of us out there, so they had no choice. I appreciate all of you sitting here, and I appreciate all the work that everyone does. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart, because it's hard. I know what it is. I mean, I lost a lot. I gave up a lot of my life to try and get messages out there. And, you know, it was all on our own dime. Tea Party isn't paid for by anybody. You know, we do that on our own. You know, we get our own flyers. We take time off from work. You know, we take time away from our families to do this work. So I really do understand what you do. I appreciate what you do, and I ask that you continue to do it. And please run for an office at any level so that you can have a better voice to
you.
say what you believe in. Thank you.
Larry. Last night, the millennials had a mixer, and I was invited. And you know, they carted me at the door. They really did. But it wasn't until I got back to my room last night, because I had gone to the mixer with already 1 or 2 glasses of wine inside me. I told them, oh, I left my card in my room. And I realized when I got back, they were really teasing me and joking around. It took me that long to figure it out. Anyway, last night was so impressive. There were hundreds of young adults at that mixer, and I have to just give Chris and the others so much credit for building up the enthusiasm that they have. So I will use that, because going into asking you the next question, Commissioner Gale, I have several questions for you, and a lot of them have to do with your advice to young people and getting them involved in politics, but also how to keep or get to those young people and explain to them conservative values in a way that they would embrace them.
Sure. Well, we need the youth in the conservative movement desperately. And what I did was, I hope, improves that movement. But the biggest advice I could give to young individuals out there that would like to get into public service is don't be afraid. You know, people told me, you're going to ruin your life. Not my political life, but my life. And I thought to myself, the most important thing in life is my family. And win or lose an election, you still have your family. So I thought to myself at the time I was 26 years old, you know, what do I have to lose? It's a good experience for me. I'm going to get used to talking to people. I'm going to get my name out there in the public. I had nothing to lose, and I think my biggest asset was the fear of not losing. You know, you have to put you have to have thick skin to do it. You know, there's a lot of, I probably have arrows coming out of my back, but I got through it. You have to. A few? Yeah, maybe you can get one out. Thank you. But that's what I would say is the time to take risks, just like in business, they talk about risk and reward. The time to take a risk is when you're young, because later in life you have a family and a wife, and all that is a priority. While you're young, you should be ambitious and take the risks, and just have the courage to face the obstacles and overcome the fears. So what I would say is stick to your principles, stick to your morals, put blinders on, and you just focus on the future, because we are the future. So that would be my advice for the youth.
Thank you. Very well said. Commissioner Leinbach, a couple of people out there want to know what things need still to be undone in your estimation. There's a long list. If you can keep it short.
Unfortunately, we see the importance of the Supreme Court in the recent decision. If Judge Scalia was alive, I believe today it would be unconstitutional to force government to withdraw union dues. But Judge Scalia isn't here. And God, in his sovereignty, knew that and understands why that happened. But believe me, the next president of the United States is a critical choice and will impact us beyond my generation. That is an issue that I've fought for, along with a number of other conservative county commissioners, because I don't believe we should be withdrawing union dues. And there are a lot of issues. Prevailing wage, and I could go into all of these, but prevailing wage was passed in 1962, and the threshold at which you had to use prevailing wage was $25,000. Now, I oppose the concept of prevailing wage on its face, but that is the law today. How high is that threshold today? It's $25,000. If it was simply increased to match inflation, it would be approximately $195,000. Prevailing wage costs school districts, local municipalities, county government, somewhere between 20 and 35%, depending on what kind of project you're talking about. We can go on the variety of areas where we're impacted, but there's one other, and this is where I say to my conservative colleagues, please do what many of us do at the county level. We look at our budgeting and we ask not what will it impact this year, but what's the impact in year 2, in year 3, 4, 5? Who else will it impact? If we choose not to do this activity, does it fall on the municipalities? Does it hurt someone else? Too often, we have federal and even state leaders in the conservative movement say we can save money. And it just happened in the recent budget through the children and youth budget. They decided they can save $172 million statewide in the Department of Human Services by moving fourth quarter payments to counties for children and youth services to the first quarter of the next year. You have to think about that. Unless you at some point make up that fourth quarter payment, you're continually 1 quarter behind. In addition to that, they didn't understand the law that when we as counties apply to Department of Human Services for our funding for the year, we're only allowed to apply for what the budget has appropriated. So this year, we're stuck applying for 75% of our funding. We don't know where the last 25% is going to come from, and yet we are required to do this. Unfortunately, there was language to help us, not fix it completely, in the fiscal code. And what did Governor Wolf do with the fiscal code? He allowed the budget to stand, and he vetoed the fiscal code. I've talked to a number of our conservative legislators. Most of them had no idea what I was talking about. John Eichelberger, former county commissioner, does understand this, and a number of the others do, and they're working with us. But I actually was lambasted as a liberal because I opposed the legislature saving money, and I said, you're not saving money, you're forcing it down to the counties, and the counties end up going to the property taxpayer to fund those types of things. So we have to look at that, and we as county officials have to communicate to our legislators in a humble way, but in a strong way. My wife often says to me when I go to work, be courageous, be kind.
You should always listen to your wife.
Yes.
Good advice. Lisa, one of the questions here was for you. In your bio, it says that you had gone up against representatives, you've held them accountable. And a lot of people, I think, are afraid of a backlash when they do that, or they're not quite as bold as they would perhaps like to be. How was it that you were able to do that unafraid? And then you went on to win school board elections. So it worked to your benefit. It didn't hurt you. And I think a lot of people were afraid that if they hold their representatives accountable, that it may hurt them in the long run.
One of the things that Joe said earlier was about having nothing to lose. And early on, when our congressman of the 7th District was sitting with me eating Pica's Pizza, I made a comment to him, and the chair of the Republican Party, Andy Riley, said, "You're very arrogant." And I looked at Andy and I said, "I have nothing to lose." That was the worst thing that I could have said to the chair of the Republican Party, because once you have nothing to lose, they don't control you. And I've gone into my state representative's office, and I have spoken, and I had a laundry list of things I talked to him about. And we didn't agree on much. Now, this is a Republican, and he was a police officer before he was a state representative, and he had to leave office for reasons which we can't get into, but you know, it just shows that, you know, character matters, and integrity matters, and honesty matters. And when you're talking to your state representative and they're telling you things that you know aren't true, and you know that they're feeding you a lot of lies, basically, or talking points, it's very frustrating. So you make them feel uncomfortable. But, you know, it's been a challenge. I will say, I wanted to mention also about the prevailing wage issue, and we have a lot of issues at the school board level that we deal with, as well as a project labor agreement. Going into the school board, I had no experience with project labor agreement and what it was. But I got a lot of help from Associated Builders and Contractors, and studied it for 8 hours. And I actually challenged the union lawyer who was presenting the issue to our board to try to get it approved. And I won that argument against a union lawyer, and I knew nothing about it. So everybody is able, if they want to learn the issue, to understand it. I also understand, and I'm looking into this right now, that the PSCA has hired an open shop to do work on their building. If that's true, they are hypocritical, and it needs to be exposed for who they are, because they are a big advocate of prevailing wage, which hurts our children and does nothing to benefit us locally. So common sense should prevail, but we've got to get the word out on several issues and make people understand them in kitchen table conversation.
That's right. A lot of times that's where it starts, right? And that's what this panel really is all about. Each one of you have just taken that and run with it, unafraid. I have a question for Sam. Where is it? Okay, it starts with Semper Fi. And they want to know how you balance a job with a Fortune 500 company and have the time or find the time to not only campaign, but to serve. Answer that, Sam.
That's a good question.
Isn't it, though?
I think one of the challenges I have had is the work-life balance and trying to find the time to do things. And, Senator Cruz, who was here yesterday, talked about the presidential campaign, and he talked about when you're running for president, you turn your schedule over to somebody else. And they just basically make a schedule and tell you where to be and when to be there. And pretty much that's what I find myself doing. I get invitations to so many things. There are so many meetings. When I ran for county council, folks said, hey, it's 2 public meetings a month, maybe a couple committee meetings here and there.
Yeah, right.
I haven't had a week go by. I haven't had 5 or 6 things to attend with just that, not to mention a job, a family, and then all the things I do for the local county committee. So it is a challenge, but you know what? With that challenge there, I can tell you that I've had some of the most fulfilling times. Had the opportunity to go to a school in the Hill District in Pittsburgh. It was Miller K-5 African-Centered Academy, where 2 businesses were donating eyeglasses to poor children in grades 1 through 5. To have the opportunity as an elected official to sit there and to see these children get the gift of corrected vision so that they can now see the chalkboard. They can now read the book. Those are things that, that's a reward. That's not a chore. That's not work. To attend the Allegheny County Police Association awards banquet and to be able to stand up there and honor these men and women who put their lives on the line for us on a daily basis. That's not a chore, So I think from a time perspective, it does take up a lot of time of your day, but I can also tell you I feel much more blessed to have had the opportunity to meet so many people out there that are making such a difference in our community. So, again, I think it's a blessing.
It's nice. That's a good attitude to have. This question can be for any of you, since you've all had ample opportunity to speak this morning. What is the impact of federal regulations on local government? Anything come to mind right away, commissioners?
I'll give you a great example, and this is the law of unintended consequences. Back in 2012, the U.S. government, House, Senate, and the President signed something called Biggert Waters. And Biggert Waters was legislation to change the funding of the National Flood Insurance Program. Now, on its face, the National Flood Insurance Program is subsidies of properties in flood-prone areas, subsidizing their insurance. However, no one looked at the law of unintended consequences. We didn't think anything of it, and all of a sudden, in 2013, counties, especially here in Pennsylvania, we have something, our number 1 resource isn't Marcellus shale gas. It may be the most valuable, but water is a huge resource compared to much of the rest of the country. And that also means we have a lot of flood-prone areas. We started to find homeowners, especially, who all of a sudden were getting new premiums. They might have a $150,000 home, and their new insurance premium for the year was $14,000. and said, what happened? I was paying $1,000 or $600, and it ended up it was bigger waters. We said, well, wait a minute, what's that mean? Dauphin County, Steelton School District. If all of a sudden you found your home that the flood insurance costs more than it did to buy your home, what happens when you go to sell your home or your business? Anyone know? Who's going to buy it? The only people that don't need flood insurance are people that have a cash deal. If you own the home on a cash basis, you're not going to need flood insurance. It might not be smart, but you don't need it. But if you have a loan from the bank, whether you're residential or commercial, you have to have flood insurance. All of a sudden, we realized counties are going to be left with large quantity of properties that are unsellable. The Steelton School District estimated that if they lost those properties, they'd lose $32 million annually. The County Commissioners Association, at the national level, NACO, ended up in 2014 lobbying the White House, the House leadership, and the Senate leadership to extend the time so that we can come up with a better long-term solution. And day one, we were told, we're not making any changes. White House told us no. House leadership told us no. Senate leadership told us no. Conservatives, liberals alike, they all thought this was good. In 60 days, from the beginning of January till the end of February, we passed a bill and got it signed by the president that gave us a 5-year period to get this right. That's an example, and that's why, again, I say we can make a difference in a national level. Our own national association did not know about the issue until 2 board members spoke up at a board meeting, and those board members were myself, a commissioner from Berks County, and a Democratic commissioner here from Dauphin County, George Hartwick. We spoke up at a national board meeting. They found out that what we said was right and true, and we were able to change the legislative impact. That's one example. It happens all the time, and again, I'm convinced it's because most of our federal and state level government leaders, executive and legislative, do not really understand the impact of their decisions on the local community and specifically on counties.
Thank you very much. What I'd like to do is take each of the panelists, give you 2 minutes to just wrap things up and encourage others to get involved, talk about some of the rewards. I know that there are disappointments and there are battles, but why don't you at least share some of the rewards, too, of serving in local government? We'll start with Lorraine. We'll just go ahead down there.
Well, I think that, one of the things that people are always complaining about in our county and why I ran was because people were losing their homes. And one big thing and an issue here in my county was reassessment. Reassessment is not going to do anyone any good because taxes are fundamentally unfair, period. That's it. They aren't fair. Someone will come up to the county and get their taxes lowered after they house out get the prices from different housing, and that's done consistently. I don't know if you're finding that in your counties or not, but House Bill and Senate Bill 76, I am constantly pushing people because they come to our meetings and say, when are you going to reassess properties so we can lower our taxes? When in fact, most of the people that live in our county, their taxes will go up. They say 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, but I tend to disagree with that. So I would ask that you continue to fight for, property tax elimination, Paycheck Protection Act. Absolutely it has to pass. We have to get that done. And we need someone in this audience to run for governor in a few years because we're going to need a conservative in there to fix everything that's been broken in our state for the past few years. And I would encourage anyone here that feels that fire in the belly to do it. And thank you all. What's that?
There you go.
Well, whoever you pick.
I think it's Scott Wagner.
Somebody get
No.
up there and run, you know, and run at your local level. Like I said,
Thank
you only
you, Larry.
need your own vote to run for a committee, so please get involved. And thank you all for being here and taking the time to come and hear what we have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lisa?
I think the most important thing for me was meeting a lot of wonderful people and friends that I found along the way, as well as encouraging and inspiring other people to either run for office or help others run for office. At the school board level, I brought attention to a lot of issues. I was able to go to the School Board Association and present paycheck protection as a platform position. Although it didn't pass, it brought attention to the issue. I stopped the project labor agreement. And I think another success would be keeping the union boss out of Harrisburg in our caucus, Republican caucus, as well as exposing some of the hypocrisy that's gone on. So I would say they were some of my successes. Currently, I am working to replace our U.S. 7th District Congressman, who's been a big disappointment. Stan Casasio is running, and that's been very rewarding to show people that they do have choices in the primary, and that's about it.
Thank you. Sam?
I think I shared in the answer to the last question some of the things that I found rewarding, which were having the opportunity to meet many of the constituents and many of the folks who are providing these services to us on a continuing basis, and what they put into this. I think Joe mentioned before that if you're not sitting at the table, you're on the menu. And I think the whole reason I ran for county council in Allegheny County, because I wanted to create change. I wanted to try to attract and draw more people to the Republican Party, because only by doing so are we going to have the opportunity to win real county-wide office, whether it be the county executive, controller, or treasurer. But I think that you do that by showing people that you're part of the solution and part of the problem. And what you do is, once you're elected, it's no longer Democrats or Republicans, but it's folks just trying to work on the issues that are before you today to try to deliver good government, to the citizens. So I think we have been doing that. I think many folks, I don't know any of the folks from Western Pennsylvania, they read the papers in the past, and they've seen how a council had been referred to previously as a circus. Well, the circus is out of town now because, we're not fighting at the meetings. We're not carrying on. The Republicans are all caucusing together. We're voting as a bloc. We are making a difference. So I think those are the things that I take away just a couple months, into this job.
But Sam, that doesn't necessarily mean compromise, right? The fact that you're getting together, a lot of times people say, well, you're all getting along, and somebody's compromising.
No, you're absolutely right. And Steve, I think the thing is, what happened in the past was folks would wait until the night of the council meeting where a bill got dropped on the floor. Then they fight about it. My idea is I would rather get involved in the committee level. When the genesis of this idea where they want to propose a piece of legislation takes hold, that's where you want to have the conversation. You want to point out the flaws and the pitfalls in what they're perceiving, so that bad bill or that legislation never makes it to the floor. Now, it's not something that the public sees all the time, but that's the way you can really have an impact. Good government is preventing bad government, and I think that's the way, one of the rules that I'm trying to take on in Allegheny County.
Thank you. Commissioner Gale?
Yeah, last year was a very special experience for me. Of course, I'll never forget it. And I met thousands and thousands of people I never met before. I made dear friends, and it was the way I campaigned. A lot of candidates have the theory, their campaign style is, I'm going to go to every other candidate's fundraiser and cocktail party. Well, it's the same 45 people every night of the week. Where what I did is, in my case, they probably weren't supporting me. I went to the people, and I had 137 meet and greets that the newspaper was calling a cup of joe. It's kind of like a play on words, a coffee clutch, a cup of joe. And I went into the living rooms of homes all across Montgomery County, shared my background, my platform, and I listened to the concerns of the people. And then those people became my volunteers. I had about 250 poll workers on election day, and most of them were people that were never active in politics. So that was a positive. And as far as looking towards the future, I did it. I was an underdog. They said I couldn't win, and we did, because at the end of the day, the people have the vote, and we have to remember that. We can overcome the large dollar amounts, and we can overcome the system if we say it's a collective group and we continue to put people before politics, because that's what people want. When I knocked on a door when I was campaigning in the primary, I introduced myself. I'm Joe Gale. I'm running for county commissioner. Most people don't know what a county commissioner does, right? You explain that a little bit, and I would say, I'm running in the primary on May 19th, and I'm unendorsed by the Republican Party. Well, as soon as I said I'm unendorsed by the Republican Party, you know, they said, you could stop right there. If you have a yard sign, put it on my lawn. That was my biggest selling point. So I would just leave it on that note that if we continue to put people before politics, because obviously the political establishment system doesn't get it right. That's why we're in the mess that we're in. As Lisa mentioned, I inspired someone to run for Congress this year in the primary. He's running in the 7th Congressional District in Pennsylvania, challenging Congressman Pat Meehan. Are there people here from the Heritage Foundation? If you could clap. There I see some of you. Well, the Heritage Foundation has a scorecard, a conservative scorecard, and they grade the representatives in Congress based on how they vote. And Congressman Pat Meehan has a 31% conservative scorecard. So that means his voting record is closer to Nancy Pelosi than the average House Republican, which is 63%. He's 31%. You know, he voted to fund Obamacare, voted to fund Planned Parenthood, voted for Obama's amnesty for illegal immigrants, voted to raise the debt ceiling 4 times. When we have rhinos, I call them, Republican in name only, I'm sure a lot of you are frustrated with rhinos, and you have somebody with the courage to put their name on the ballot and run and give us a choice, we the people owe it to them to get behind them. And we talked about how busy our schedules
But we can't
are.
talk any longer because
Okay.
if we do, then the commissioner will not have opportunity to speak. So could we
Good.
move on to him then?
Which
Go
has
ahead.
happened before.
Okay,
All right.
well, we're not going to let it happen here today.
But
go
thank
ahead.
you,
have
everyone.
2 minutes, that's it.
Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
The sum of good governance. Let me sum it up in 2 quick ways. Number 1, the fiscal house is what matters most. If your home or your business are in a fiscal mess, at some point nothing else matters. It drives every decision you make. When government is in a fiscal mess, and we see it in Harrisburg, we see it in Washington, nothing else matters. And fiscal responsibility isn't something we do and say, hey, that's done. It is something that requires constant vigilance. Good governance, the sum of good governance, number 1, is a sound, fiscally responsible policy, whether you're local government, state, or federal. Number 2, the sum of good governance is understanding office. You've been given what Teddy Roosevelt referred to as a bully pulpit. I have a statutory responsibility that requires me basically to make budget decisions, vote once a week, and if that's all I do, I'm in essence doing my job. But 3 years ago, the mayor of Reading announced he was implementing public labor agreements for all construction projects in the city of Reading. I thought that was a very bad idea. And I remember the night that I, along with the head of our local Chamber of Commerce, a local business person, and our local economic development group, went before the Reading City Council, the mayor, and we walked into a room and were surrounded by union members. It was the most intimidating meeting I ever attended. But I will tell you, I was proud to sit there that night and be in the minority and explain why PLAs are un-American, why they are not about local workers, why they are damaging to taxpayers. And today, there are no project labor agreements in the city of Reading.
Thank you,
They backed
Commissioner.
down,
Thank you.
council backed down, and
I
the
wanna
mayor
say
never moved forward.
Thank you, Commissioner. I want to say thank you to the panelists and to all of you, and I hope that this panel was able to encourage you to get involved on some level in politics. And I had one question for Loman Henry. Why couldn't I sit for an hour on one of these really comfortable looking chairs? That's all I want to know. You got an answer for me?
It's right here.
Darn it, I never saw it. Thank you so much. I hope that you've been encouraged by this. Thank you to the panelists.